Welcome to the tips video part of this post. If you're just looking for the tour of the castle and you're not really interested in the tips, you can skip this video. This is for players who might be a little bit newer to the game or are interested in the defense system and a couple of other things that you saw in the first video. So let's get right to it. The first thing I want to show you after many hours, too many hours I think, of playing this game is this right here. This is something I wouldn't play the game without. It's called Cheat Engine. If you don't have it already, it's free. I think if you get 6.3 you don't have to update it or pay for it. I bought 6.4 as well. Just thought I'd show it. There's 6.4. I thought I'd show it to you anyway. Basically, you start it up, you hit this little computer icon, find 7 days to die, click open, and then you can do this, enable speed hack, and you watch this go up. I've got hotkeys set in. You can do that in somewhere in there. It's got options. Anyway, it makes mining a whole lot less mind-numbing. I put in my time. I just don't want to be doing that anymore, and it doesn't really affect the game. You of course can only do it on a single player, but it makes mining a lot less tedious, and a few other jobs as well. If you've got, say, 100 trees to chop down, you can speed up the game a little bit, sort of save your real time, and then just slow the game back down when you're ready to plant new trees, that sort of thing, and away you go. That's my first tip, probably the most important. The next thing I want to do is talk to you about structural integrity. I'm not going over the whole thing, just something you may have noticed in the castle is that I've got some very large gaps. And normally you don't see gaps that big in a vanilla server. This of course is a modded server, so there's a few differences. But there is something I want to show for people who don't understand structural integrity. You really should try and find a couple of videos on YouTube. There are lots of really great ones. One of the most basic things though I do want to show you is this. Material should be attached to itself. You see how there's wood with cement at the top, and this one's just got wood at the top. If you try to put concrete on a wooden block, the farthest you'll get is 5, and it'll collapse. Material likes to be attached to itself, the same way it would be in a real world situation. Instead of 5, I think you can get 13. There's 5. Whoops. Let's take that one out. Oh yeah, I got a better one for that. Developer tool kills anything. There's 10 and 14. Any block will collapse regardless of how strong it is, but you can get this to 13 before it collapses. There you go. And that's the difference. In a real world situation, you're going to have something like this: a support tower, and there's your beam. It makes it much stronger. In this game, it's essentially the same thing. You want to build like that. Excuse me. What you'll also notice is this is a gap of 9. You generally don't build gaps this big in a vanilla. If you want this block, you'll have to either mod it in or use creative, and you look for bridge. You'll have to click this button. Normally this is all you see. It's a dev block, and you can either use bridge metal rivet or you can use bridge concrete. The difference is if you look at something like reinforced concrete, you see this here, how it's got a max load of 400. Regular reinforced concrete only has 120. That's a huge difference. That means you can add a whole lot more weight, and you can get these nice long gaps of 9 right there. If you also put these in the way you would in a real world situation, this little support block here, you don't have to use angles. You can use a pole, you can use all sorts of things, as long as the game can read any block there, including one of these, this reinforced metal siding. It still reads as a block. I actually probably need those. Then the game reads it as a gap of 7, and you can add even more weight, and that's what you saw in the castle. A whole lot of span, a whole lot of weight sitting on top of it, and it's just fine. It's never going to collapse. These things, by the way, they may seem useless in the game. Not a lot of people find use for them, but they're extremely useful, and I'm going to show you another one of the things they're good for. You may have noticed in the backyard, and I'll show you that again. I'll go by and show you another one of the tricks there, is that there wasn't this gap between where I was walking, the bricks, and this, where the grass was, the dirt. This is what you normally get, that gap right there. If you want to solve that, use these metal siding. See that? Just like that. Build your yard just a little bit longer. You want to go one block extra out. You put your dirt one block and then you put these metal siding over top, paint it, and no one will ever know. And that's how you get that nice, neat edge on the side there, kind of thing. Another thing I would say about these reinforced metal siding, let's say you've got a doorway you have to put right here, and you happen to have a support column right there. You can put the metal siding right on the side here and walk right through it, and the game will still read it as a solid block all the way through, and you won't lose your structural integrity, and it'll still read it all the way to bedrock as a solid block kind of thing. So those seemingly useless blocks, they're your friend. And just to show you how to build these here, another one of the questions I had is how do you get those bathrooms in that tiny little space? It's like this. It's these center blocks. These you can actually do in vanilla. The only one you can't do is this commercial door. You'll have to use a regular wooden door, but this is how you do it. You use the center blocks, build them 3 high, and then use your plates, put them on the edge, just like that. One on the side, and your door fits right in, and you can actually fit a toilet there or a faucet up there if you want to make it a shower, and yep, you fit inside and the doors work just fine. And believe it or not, these 2 stalls actually fit in a space of 2 by 3. That's it. That's the space they're in right now. And if you stack them up side by side, you can get a whole bunch of these in a tiny little area. And if you put one opposite on the other side, it's still wide enough that it doesn't look cramped, it doesn't look ridiculous. And you saw the ones in the castle, they actually look pretty good. So let's go on to the next thing. Let's see if I can find back home here. I don't normally build entrances like this. This is the drawbridge entrance. These aren't hard to figure out. I'm not going to give you a tutorial. There's already a really great one on YouTube. It's really easy to find. The only thing I want to mention though is I'm way in there. Well, let's do it where you can actually see it. Way in there, and that's approximately 75 to 80 blocks. That's how far away you need to build this so that mobs won't spawn on this side of the door. You want them to spawn over here. So 75, I think you'll be safe. I think 75 is right about there, maybe here kind of thing. If you want to go a little bit further, I understand. The problem is sometimes they get caught. You see how I can walk over top of it? Occasionally zombies will do this. They get stuck on it and then they just start smashing it, and which means they now have access to your castle. Not a good idea. So we'll come over here. I'm going to do this last, the defense system. I'll show you why this is the way it is. We'll walk through it. Just a couple little tips about having things like all these plants and sort of thing. This, my daughter reminded me, it needed a lady's touch. Adding color and adding plants and that sort of thing really makes the difference in a build, especially if you're doing something like this. Excuse me. That's more of a showcase build. You really want to have a lot of color, a lot of plants kind of thing. It's not really a big deal. This I wouldn't recommend anymore if you're a newer player. This used to be a viable way of defending your base, making these really long drops and having them come down. Doesn't do much anymore. Horde Night, pretty much all of them survive it now. It's because if you want to try and find a nice even surface like this, you're generally at about the same level as the desert, but it's not far enough of a drop anymore. So don't bother. I made it because it's a castle and it should have sort of a moat kind of thing, but that's basically why I did it, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. There's the area I was talking about. That is, in fact, see, metal siding. Don't even notice it, do you? What I also wanted to show you is this little trick here. I'll turn my light off so you can see it a little bit better. Hopefully you can see that on YouTube. Got a little flame coming out of that. These embers are not vanilla. You have to either mod them in or add a recipe, that sort of thing. But if you want the flame, just put a burning barrel underneath. And there you go. It does attract a few screamers, but that's fine. Also, while I'm here, if you want to grow a tree, but you don't want it as ridiculously big as those ones way back there, put a bit of clay under. They'll never grow past this size. Another thing about builds, one thing you may not have noticed is that when you look from it from the ground, this place looks huge. This is a little trick I borrowed from Disney, and White Flags, I believe, used this for some of their builds as well. This is called forced perspective. I know it looks really, really tall, but it's not really that tall. What you're seeing is 8 high, 7 high, 6 high, 5 high. And then a long window like that to offset it so it tricks your eye so you don't notice what I've done. It makes the building look a lot larger than it really is. If Disney uses it, you gotta know it works here. Turns out it works in the digital world just as well as the real world. Looks good. The other advantage of having these really, really high ceilings is you may not have noticed, but this is a subfloor. This is all wood. The actual support floor is there. That's concrete. And on top of that is another whole thing of wood. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of extra resources, but you can do things like this. That's a planter. Right? I can add a planter. I can have these sunken living rooms kind of thing like this. I can have a step down here. That all comes from having, even this bedroom, that all comes from having a subfloor right extended right out into the deck here where I've got enough room to put grass. I can step down here to get underneath this, and it looks great. It's a neat little tip. Build your ceilings high, really, really high if you want it to look like a nice big build. You know, it gives it a little bit more look of elegance, that kind of thing. And it allows you to do a couple of little tricks like that. The next thing I wanted to show you is up here. By the way, you don't always have to have these beams. See how I've got, I'll come back down here and I'll show you a few of these beams like this. This is the stuff I was talking about. That's how I can support so much weight. This doesn't have too many gaps kind of thing. I have other builds where it's just big, huge rooms. And there's just one support column here and there kind of thing, and these long gaps, that kind of stuff. You don't have to do that. The very top here, I did this with, instead of using this as a support beam, I did this. The whole top floor here is bridge. It's the same max load as this, and I didn't have to put any support columns. I knew the top floor wouldn't have big high ceilings kind of thing, so I didn't want to take up one square to put in those support columns, so that's what I did, and it holds a ton of weight. It's got all that sitting on it. It's got a jacuzzi with some water. It's got all sorts of stuff. It's not going to collapse. Now here's what I had a lot of questions over. This is the jacuzzi, and I'll let you take a good look at it. A lot of people are having trouble with this edge about getting these things on, and by the way, the radio, this is control panel with a chain link fence pole. That's it. It's the most boring control panel. It turns out it makes the best radio. How you get these things along the edge, a lot of people are making the mistake. This is how I'm making my edges, with these blocks, these plates, and this is probably the best view of it. You see that there? That's how I'm able to put the glass around the edge and still get my plants on the side. A lot of people have made that mistake. How also you get this 1.5 deep water here. These are glass plates. This is the business glass that you make in your forge. Just put them face down on there, and when you put your water in, it'll stay a 1.5 blocks high. It makes it nice and deep. If you do get a few of the errors where the water's pouring down the side of these, just frame across, just like that. That'll actually get rid of it all. Take your frames away, and you get this nice calm water, and that's how you do it. A few of the other builds I put out, you'll notice I always have a sun tanning area up top. I thought I'd just mention this for some of the newer players. This is the exact center of my build. If you go down, it's exactly in the very, very center. And I do that because I want to maximize my safe area. There's only so far that it'll protect you from zombies spawning, and I know exactly how far that is. When I designed this, I did it on graph paper, and I counted out the squares. I know how far how far I can build out before something starts spawning, kind of thing, and that's why I use that. I actually planned to have this sun tanning area before I actually planned the entire castle. So not a bad idea. You don't have to do it like this. You can actually have it one square off. Let's say I wanted to put it in here, kind of thing. I could have a bedroom down here and stick a bed right there. That would work just fine. Just thought I'd mention that for some of the newer players. You might want to try that thing. Also, you heard me mention that I don't have the whole place lit up. You'll see these are empty, and so are these. They've disappeared. And it's a bug that's in A16. Hopefully it's fixed in A17. There's only so many things you can light up and so many things that you can wire. I've got all the stuff in place to do it. I unfortunately can't because you start getting bugs like that. It just doesn't work, and you get vortex errors and that sort of thing. Anyway, I thought I'd mention that. Just limit your lighting. That's what you get for now. We'll see what A17 does. I'm going to show you this as well. A few people asked how to build these. Build the back part first. This layer here, this is actually 2 layers. Put the center square and go 2 out that way, 2 out that way, 2 up, 2 down. Then you put your squares and then your angles, kind of thing. And then you build this outer layer on top. It's actually really, really easy. It's only 4 solid squares and the rest are just angles. Pretty easy. These are just pillars, 50 pillars. This, unfortunately, you'll have to either use, you'll have to mod it in or use creative. That, if you type in pole, you'll see it's right here, in pole top. I have it so that the traders sell it, or you can pick it up on the ground. You can use whatever you like. But anyway, that's how you build it. Just alternate your colors, kind of thing, and that's pretty much it. If you're using creative anyway, not a bad idea to turn off. If you do it just like this, turn off physics while you're building it. You don't have to, though. I did it actually framing and everything else. I did this as much legitimately as I could, but that's basically how you do it. So I've covered force perspective. I'm going through a list here, and I'm trying to get through the whole list and make this video as short as possible. Let me see, where am I at here? There's something I wanted to... Somebody asked me about this. How do you make that dish pit? This is a 100 pillar turned on its side right there. This rail is not vanilla, but you can use the same one I had on the baby crib. You can make them and place it flat. You just color it like that sort of thing. And this is either, you can use the furnace or the mortician's drawer. You can buy them at the trader. That's just an angled piece, a block, whatever you want. Just put the texture on it. That's it. There's not much to make in that sort of thing. So we've got I think that's about it. I think what I wanted to show you left is basically the rest is the defense system. So for any of you who wanted to see how to build this, after putting in thousands of hours, and yes, I know some of you have way more than I do. You probably have another digit, but between 3,000 and 4,000 hours is enough, I think, to know what I'm doing as far as the defense system. There's a reason why I normally don't build anything like this. I build in a separate place, and I'll show you what I mean. It's called a kill box. You can build this out of cobblestone by day 4. Some people can actually build what you see here by day 7. The veteran players can get their forge up and running by day 3, be making concrete, even steel, and by 7 they can build this whole thing. It's really, really simple. You don't have to build this part of it. I just did this for fun, just for some action. Basically, you can just put it on pillars and have it standing up top and, have places to shoot down, kind of thing. But this here, this little area, this actually works. Upside down, these are metal spikes, and you put the wooden spikes on top, just like that. Or you can use barbed wire, kind of thing. After all this time, after all these builds, it's still the best system. It really works. It's really cheap, easy to maintain, and when you want to expand it, sorry I don't have a larger build of this, you generally make it a little bit higher as well, but you make this into an island, and you make that one into an island, and then you make a walkway across, and if you've got these modded in, you can make that span 9, but otherwise you just put a support pillar there and put some spikes around it, and these walls get pushed out to here, kind of thing, and that's how you expand it. And you can have several players on it, all working on it. I've only ever done it with 4, but other people say you can fit a whole lot more, and it's fun. It's a lot more fun. You can see them coming, you can shoot at everybody. It does just fine. It's easy to maintain. You really only ever have to come here one day out of the week. Everybody shows up on Zombie Day, and that's about it. That's normally how I build a defense system. Really easy, really cheap. I know it doesn't use any of the fancier stuff, but what can I say? It works. However, some people wanted to know how to build this. Same thing. That same basic system kind of thing. But what this does is funnel them in. Again, don't need this at all. That's just for show. This all funnels them in. You of course want to have this over here to keep the spiders from coming up, and these are for show as well. They don't do anything. They come in through here, and they're going to hit these spikes. There's somebody named on the forum named Vedu, and I hope I'm saying his name correctly. It's Vedui. He does a whole series of really, really fantastic YouTube videos showing you the electrical system, showing you all sorts of things about the game. If you haven't watched his videos, you really should. He's amazing. He's a very good teacher. His videos are very well thought out. He's a very intelligent guy, very clever on how he shoots his videos. And one of the things you're going to see, and this is directly from one of his videos, is the dip system. And I think he calls it something else, but you notice how I have a ramp down and then I come back up. If you're going to use blade traps, this is absolutely the most efficient way to do it. If you're on the same level as this, the zombies will come through. They will see these as a target, and most of them will stop in front and start hitting it. Occasionally they'll run through the middle kind of thing, or they will run in, but most of them will stop right there and start smacking on this thing, in which case you just, these things are going to die really, really quickly. However, if you have this dip, they're low like this and they can't see it. They'll run, they'll hit the ramp, come up, and these things are now behind them and start smacking them on the side and on the back of the head, and it works great. It's hysterical because they're right beside you. They can't do a thing to your barrier here, and it's just smack, 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 and they're dead. It doesn't really matter which one it is, they all die. Great system. I would highly recommend that your fans and your electric system, shouldn't have done that, are on a separate circuit than your guns, of course, because your guns, you're not going to need them on all the time, especially if you're using a funnel like this with a really wide field like this. And you do this, of course, for loot. You want as wide a system as you can get like this, so the whole thing is covered in bodies, and you have plenty of time to just kill, and then when morning comes, they're there. You loot them all. If you have a very, very narrow system, they start stacking on top of each other, and you just lose too much loot. That's just all there's to it. Another thing you'll also see common in every electrical system that the veterans make is this gap. It serves two purposes, of course. So your main column is 4 wide, you have your wall, and then you have a gap. If you put the electrical system here, if a cop blows up here, it will actually damage these on the other side of the wall, and 2 cops will actually knock it right out. So if you've got this gap, they're perfectly fine. What it also does is allow you to build this. I can actually run underneath those wires in here and access all this stuff. See that? I can even reach 3 across, and I can get rid of corpses. I can loot them. I can do repairs, everything during the horde, and it's fine. I can reach all this out here, no problem. And another thing I want to mention as well is this is a wedge tip. A few people on my server built this, and they're saying it's too high. How are you doing that? How are you reaching? These are not ramps. Having nothing here is too low. You're too low here to reach over, and having a ramp is too high. You can't quite reach underneath this thing. It's a wedge tip, and if you want to know what that looks like, it's not this piece of the wedge. It's this small piece here, and yes, you can make them in vanilla. That's how you do it. It's actually the perfect height to reach everything, and that's how you do it. You can, of course, put more of these in. You don't need to put them. If you've got 4 up here and a couple extra, you'll find that's way more than enough. I've had 600 come through here, and I've never had one reach here unless I wanted them to, unless I let them through. It's absolutely devastating, this system. Vedu did a really, really great job of testing all the right things, where you should put your guns and where the fan should be. He was absolutely right. He's a genius, and this works. You can, if you want, though, if you want to make it a little bit more skookum. Or if you've modded in some harder zombies, that kind of thing. Plenty of room to put dart traps or whatever you want. Once again, you want your guns, which are right up there, on a separate system so you can turn them on and off. So you keep your fans on all night, keep your electricity system all night, and only when the cops show up kind of thing is when I turn them on. Another little tip I want to show you, all the PvPers know this. If you're going to build a window, put these in here. Right? No one says they have to stay closed. They make a really good barricade. I have them here in case a cop does something stupid and shoots out one of the guns. I really don't want him hitting the wiring behind here. So I keep these closed. And I just open them up when I want to access them and put in more ammo. It's a good little tip there. So why is this color coded? I got asked. It's because I have OCD and I like everything nice and neat. That's the only entrance that's slightly different. Every other one is identical. And try finding the exact right place where you've got your supplies in a place that's completely symmetrical. So if you've got color coding, you don't have to think. It accesses a different part of your brain, and you just instinctively go for whatever color. I know that red is where my stuff is. I know that blue is where I have the emergency access ladder kind of thing, where I need to get to, and that's it. It tells me where I am all the time. A couple other things I would also mention: if you're going to have any kind of access to the outside and build a system like this, have these backup. You just never know what spiders can do, and close them. Any kind of system like this that is has access to the outside, if you leave one of these open, they won't target properly. They'll actually try and get through that opening, and they'll start smashing through here and go right down into there, or run across, or whatever system you set up. If everything's closed off and this is the only way to get through, this is where they're coming through. And finally, how do you build this? I'm not going to do the whole walkthrough. I'm just basically going to show you the real trick to it is building a 2x2 column instead of a single one. If you've got OCD, you're going to love this, because this is perfectly symmetrical, and it's one of the reasons why I did 2x2, but it also makes perfect sense. I did this on a grid. Basically, you do, there you go, 5, you got a space of 5. You don't have to worry about these huge gaps kind of thing. There's not that much. You don't even have to put these things in. I did anyway, just because I have an entire castle built on top of this. But that's how you do it. A gap of 5, and then you put in your wall. The rest is really easy. You know that it's only going to be 4 wide. You know that you're going to have a dip, right, for your blade traps right there. So you need this little gap right here, right? That makes sense. You know that you're going to have this little alleyway to protect your electrical system. That doesn't, you know, that's intuitive right there. That's actually really common sense, right? The only thing I could say is that you kind of want this. You really want to make one of these right at the entrance here. I didn't originally have that. I had the wall blocked off, and I'm glad I put this in because it allows me to access this area. For some reason, this is where I tend to get the most kills, and that's because of these guys. Every time I'm doing a little bit of repairs or I'm looting something, I turn the guns on and they just blow away everything right there. That's where everything tends to die. That's not feral or irradiated kind of thing. Those tend to make it just a little bit further right into the electricity, but the rest all die right here. So I'm constantly at this, and I was losing way too much loot. So I would strongly suggest you do that. And that's about it. Those are little tips I wanted to show you. All the rest, basically, you can get in other videos, kind of thing, that sort of stuff. Just a few little things that I noticed weren't showing up in a few extra videos. If you want to do these offset things, I suppose it's probably the last thing I'm going to show you. This is your main support column. Normally I would build on top of that straight to the top. You can see that's a little offset. I've now got a balcony here, so now that's offset, right? These aren't actually sitting on the main support column right there. So now you're talking about weight. So be clever. Think about where your support column is going to be. Some of these really do go down to bedrock, and some of them, they don't look like they're solid all the way through, but they are. You'll see a stack like that kind of thing, and I'll have right there the metal siding. That's a solid block, and you can't tell. And that'll go all the way through, right up to there kind of thing. And I'll do little tricks like that all the way through. I might not have done it in that spot. There was another one. I might have confused that with another one. But tricks like that all the way through help you do these little cheats like this, where you can put these balconies, you can have stuff offset, and it looks like you don't quite have support all the way through, but you really can. And that'll keep your builds from collapsing, because there's nothing worse than having a build this big and the whole thing falling down on you. I'd really hate to see that. So just try a few things. Try practice server, that sort of stuff, and that's about it. That's what I wanted to show you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see all of you guys in Alpha 17.